with what's really happening in southern Utah. Today we have Ken Carpenter, Sheriff Ken Carpenter from Iron County today, going over what's happening with the development of Cedar City and how we can make it a better place and a better, safer place. Ken, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for coming in. So in early October, there was a town hall discussion about a new jail site and possibly a bigger complex than what our area needs right now, but to kind of grow for the future. I know that there's been some pretty heated discussions in the last couple of months surrounding that. But let's kind of step back and go through the details of what really needs to happen in this area. I mean, as my memory serves, the jail that's on the north end of town, just off of Sargent Drive, DL Sargent Drive, excuse me, was built in 1985-ish, right?
Correct.
Well before any of the plans past the new third hospital now in Iron County was even developed. Take us back to where the planning started for this new jail, or kind of the need-based for making sure that our community is protected.
Yeah. So our jail is currently the oldest jail in the state by quite a long ways, actually. And it just doesn't meet the needs of our community anymore from several different aspects. From a aspect of the infrastructure itself. The infrastructure is extremely old. It's beginning to fail. When you look at what the cost would be to be able to try to bring it back up to standards, is prohibitively expensive. And even if we were able to restore the infrastructure on it, the jail facility itself is too small for our current needs. And because of the agreements that were made with the city when it was first built, with conditional use permits and different things like that, we cannot exceed our current footprint of the current jail. So right now, our jail has a capacity of about 250 inmates, but you can't use all of that bed space because of the classification system, which requires us to have separation between certain classifications of inmates. So that reduces the bed space that's actually available for the actual housing of inmates. So currently we're at about 184 bed capacity. When this jail was built originally, it was built for 4 female inmates, and we're housing on average at least 20 to 30 female inmates. We don't have room for them. We have several of them that are sleeping in what are called boats on the floor, because we just don't have the space for that capacity. Here, about 4 or 5 years ago, they had to take the gym facility and turn it into a open squad room type bedding facility in order to increase the bed space for the jail. So we've literally done everything we can to extend the life of our current facility, and it just no longer meets the needs of our community. Our community is growing so rapidly that we have to build a new facility. It's a mandate by law for the sheriff to provide a jail facility for the community. It's something that by law we have to do. And we're at the point that if we don't start doing something soon, we're going to be in a place where we're quite frankly going to end up getting sued because we're not meeting the needs of the law.
Well, and it's incredible that the greater public that's unaware of these issues, that's going back and forth, doing their 9 to 5, dropping kids off here and there and running their normal routines, are in such an uproar about this, because as our population grows, the need for hospitals, the needs for pharmacies, the needs for schools and educations, the need for even banks has been well fitted back into our community, because those, I'm going to say, are quote-unquote normal aspects. But jails and facilities for housing inmates and unlawful citizens is still a necessary, I would say not an evil, but a necessary way of our communities developing.
Absolutely. It's an absolute necessity of the functions of law enforcement within our within our county. And one of the things that people need to understand, because that comment has been brought up a lot, is we need to be building more schools, not a jail. Money for jails does not compete for money for schools. They're not the same pot of money. They're completely separate, and it really doesn't make any difference how many schools need to be built. A jail isn't going to take money away from that pot of money for schools.
From this segment of what's really happening in Southern Utah, we've gone through the bare necessities of what communities need to make sure that they're growing and developing in a timely manner with timely facilities for each of the different growth stages. Coming up next, we're going to go through what this area truly needs to be plotting for the next 30 years of growth and capacity for Iron County. Welcome back. This is McKennan Hansen with what's really happening in Southern Utah with Sheriff Ken Carpenter. Ken, as we've been discussing the developments of Iron County and how we do need a jail to go back through and really recreate that infrastructure that we're lacking right now, kind of give us some statistics of what's really been changing, as we're going about our daily lives and not paying attention to these numbers.
Well, one of the things that you just have to keep in mind is what has been the growth rate of Iron County over the last 35 years. Because that's really what has affected the need for the jail, not to mention the failing infrastructure. But Iron County has grown considerably since the existing jail was first built back in the 80s. And right now it's in, we're from what I understand, we're becoming one of the fastest growing counties in the nation, as St. George recently has been over the past couple of years. Now, all that growth is starting to move here into Iron County. Nationally, the statistic is essentially 1% of a population base is criminal in nature. And that's no different with us. Approximately 1% of our population base is criminal in nature. And one of the things that we have to also keep in mind is that we have I-15 corridor that comes right down through the heart of Iron County and brings literally millions of people every year.
To and through and from.
Exactly, through Iron County. And 1% of that population is also criminal. And we find that we have criminal acts that take place from off of the freeway. So those are all things that are influencing the need to have a larger capacity for the jail.
Well, and from memory serves, now I don't pay attention to population other than how much traffic is going down 200 North every day and
Right.
Main Street at noon. Oh my.
Yep.
Based on population, just in my memory, as I've been a resident of Iron County almost my entire life, I remember when the 4-lane 200 North went as far as Cove Drive, and then it went back to a 2-lane across the tracks and barely across the tracks. With the population influx, I believe we're around 50,000 in the county.
Well, we're in excess of that. So 3 years ago when I came to office, if you went online and looked at the population for Iron County, it stated that it was 57,000. I think that the actual numbers were really closer to about 53,000. But let me give you an example of the growth. Just in the past year, anytime that a extension to a housing development or a new housing development is to be built in the unincorporated areas of Iron County, it has to come to me for approval because we have to state that we're able to provide law enforcement services for that community. In the last year, we've had 10 new or extensions of subdivisions, which is going to increase the unincorporated area by probably at least 4,000 residents.
Wow.
So that's just happened in the last year. When you look at the development of Cedar City, Enoch, Canaraville, Parowan, Paraguna, Bryan Head, those are all part of the county. Those are all things that have an influx on our population and on the crime statistics of the county. We're growing.
So I can do simple math sometimes in my head, so you might have to help me out a little bit.
Well, we're in trouble then.
Yeah. So around, I'm going to just round it off for 55,000 residents, and you're saying 1%.
About 1%.
So that's 5,500, correct?
Right.
And 1% of those is 550 people,
Right.
right? And you're saying our current jail capacity is 200 and
It's about well, what we can use is 184.
184. So we are serving less than 0.5% of our true need here in Iron County.
Right. And, and not everybody goes to jail, obviously.
Agreed.
But one of the things that you also have to keep in mind is the recidivism rate. So, those that are offenders, that are repeat offenders and offend over and over and over again. And, that's been, really, we've seen an increase of that with since JRI has come about, the Justice Reinvestment Initiative that decriminalized certain drug crimes to put that population into the county jails rather than having them go to state prison, which has also had a dramatic impact upon our jail population.
It's incredible the different things that go on through the county that we're not even aware of, that you're in it. I mean, it's your daily in and out.
Right.
And, just as a normal Joe Schmo driving down, I think of making sure that we're protected, but I don't know the actual statistics. So as our population has increased and that 1%, have you seen a heightened rate of criminal rates through different aspects, especially being through the I-15 corridor?
Absolutely. I mean, when we look at just drugs is probably one of the single biggest things that we deal with. And, back a few years ago when I worked for Cedar Police Department, we had a lot of drug arrests and whatnot. But back then, when it was a felony crime, we very, very rarely found firearms involved with drug crimes. Now, since the decriminalization of these drug crimes, now we see firearms almost with every arrest. Which again turns it back into a violent felony now, and should put them back into prison. But with JRI, we're having problems getting them where they really should be.
So, well, and those are incredible feats, in and of themselves, of the different things that need to happen and are improving our society for those aspects as well. With the different aspects of coming up with this, you're kind of up against a wall.
We are. We are.
Coming up on our next segment, we're going to go through how planning a jail in a new facility is getting started in the infancy stages. This is McKennan Hansen. You're the host of What's Really Happening in Southern Utah. In this segment with Ken Carpenter, we're going through how you get started in building a jail in any community, specifically for Iron County. Ken, where are we at with this?
That's a great question. We're really in the infancy stages. This is something that we've been working towards for several years. This is something that Mark Gower, when he was the sheriff, recognized as being a need. And when I took over as sheriff, it was something that the county commission was beginning to address. And so really the actual planning process has started in the last 3 years. At that point in time, when I first came into office, there were 3 different sites that we were looking at. One was out by the landfill, one was out on Highway 56, and another one was down on the bottom of 1600 North here in Cedar City. We went to Southern Utah University and asked them to do a feasibility study on the 3 different locations. They came back and said that all 3 locations were horrible locations and weren't going to work for our needs for a host of different reasons. So that put us back to square one again, where we began looking for other sites and began looking for what it was that we were going to have as a jail. So the commission and my jail staff, myself, Dan Jessen, our auditor, we began touring jails around the state and looking at designs and talking with designers and maintenance folks and whatnot to look at what a good design for a new facility would be. We began looking for new land acquisition sites. The county commission formed a committee to look specifically for land, and we gave them a list of criteria that we would need in order to facilitate a new facility like this. And that was one of the things that led to the money that was put down by the property down by Smead. One of the reasons they chose that particular property was because it met the criteria. It had the infrastructure that we needed as far as the utilities in place. It had the location reasonably close to the courts for transport. It had just everything that we were going to need, because one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that this doesn't serve only Cedar City Police Department. This serves all law enforcement agencies throughout the entire county. And so, to give you an example, one of the things that made the landfill option a horrible choice was, with the current design of the jail, we're looking at somewhere between $40 and $60 million. Just to run utilities, the basic utilities, not even sewer, but just the water and power out to that facility would cost us close to $10 million. So somewhere between a quarter and a sixth of the overall price of the entire facility we would have to add just to get the utilities out there that we need. And then we would have to tar Range Road, running from the range all the way over to Mid-Valley Road, so that the North End deputies, North End Highway Patrol, Parowan, Enoch, and Bryan Head would be able to even get to the jail without having an hour and a half drive. One of the things that you have to keep in mind is when you're looking at like Enoch and Parowan and Bryan Head police departments, they typically only have one officer on duty. And if we take them out, most times when there's an arrest, we have to get medical clearance from the hospital before we can accept them in the jail. So by the time they make the arrest, take them to the hospital, get a clearance, that's usually between 1 and 2 hours minimum right there. Then transport them another hour out to the jail, book them into jail, and then get back to their jurisdiction. Their community is going at least 4 hours, maybe 8 hours, without having an officer providing law enforcement for their community. That's way, way, way too long. We can't do that to them.
And then it seems like you have, then you have shift change, and then hour restrictions, then overtime restrictions. I mean, the scheduling alone with one incident sounds like a nightmare planning.
Right. And that's part of the issue, is we need to make sure that our facility is someplace where we already have the infrastructure, that the water, sewer, power, gas is already there, where it's reasonably close and isn't going to cost us a fortune. We need to make sure that it's close enough to the hospital, that it's easy for officers to get medical clearance, and for us in the jail facility. In my jail facility, I have a registered nurse and 3 advanced EMTs that work under the direction of medical direction of a doctor. But if we have a serious incident, we don't have the ability to be able to fully deal with that within the jail like some of the larger agencies. We have to be able to transport that inmate to the hospital, and it needs to be timely. We can't have a 40 or 50 minute delay in getting emergency out there, EMTs out there, and then transporting them back into the hospital.
So what you're telling me, in a nutshell, is that we are in the very basic planning stages of this. We are not breaking ground anytime soon, and the money that was put down is to hold and reserve a spot for us to further consider those options.
Right. The money was put down just so that we could do the due diligence on that particular site. We have several sites that we're looking at. We have at least 3 other sites that we're currently looking at.
Ken, thank you so much for clearing that up for us. As we go through the next segment of what's really happening in southern Utah, we'll go through the needs of what really has to happen in this new facility to make sure that it's accommodating the growth that we are now incurring. Thank you for joining us. This is McKennan Hansen. Welcome back to What's Really Happening in Southern Utah. I'm your host, McKennan Hansen. As we wrap this segment up with Ken Carpenter, the Iron County Sheriff, we want to talk about the needs of why the original jail was built in 1985 and what that area is doing and thriving in now, and why citizens shouldn't worry about where this new jail does get placed because of these aspects. Ken, in a nutshell, what surrounds you in an arm's length throw that you can see surrounding the jail right now?
Well, we have Fiddler's Elementary that's just within 3 blocks of us. We have Canyon View Middle School and Canyon View High School that are within 4 or 5 blocks of us. We have a church that's less than a block away. We have apartment complexes, all kinds of housing developments, from very expensive homes up in Ashdown Forest to average homes in more of the Fiddler's Canyon area to high density housing immediately within half a block from us. We literally have children walking past the jail every single day, going to and from school, going to and from lunch, and we don't have problems. We have no problems. There's been a lot of expression of concern about inmates escaping. That doesn't happen. The most likely time of an inmate escaping from a facility is during transport to or from a court or some other medical function or something like that. They don't escape from the jails. Occasionally you'll hear about somebody climbing a fence. Those are older facilities that don't have the newest technology of no-climb fences and different things like that. In our particular, even in our current facility, our inmates only get 1 hour of outdoor rec time a day. And if they violate the conduct of the jail, then that can be taken away from them. And they can be reclassified into a position where they don't have those types of liberties. The expression of inmates escaping from jail just doesn't happen. That's not a realistic concern.
One argument that I've heard of in this ongoing debate, again, we are in the infancy stages of this. We are planning, we are trying to make this work for our area because it is in desperate need of this.
Right.
But one thing is, well, my house value will decrease. There are so many, in my own opinion, there's so many more factors that increase or decrease or wax and wane a house price, not based on a jail. I would say that Fiddler's Canyon and that area is one of the more affluent places,
right,
or locations around town.
Right, and it's interesting because there were a lot of folks from like the Equestrian Point neighborhood that expressed concern over property values going down, even though the jail facility would be almost a mile away from their houses. And yet we had one lady that within the last 2 years purchased a house up in the Ashdown Forest area that said that she had searched all over the Cedar City area for her home, and that she didn't even know that the jail was there because of the low impact that we have, and that there was no difference in housing prices in Ashdown Forest, Fiddler's Canyon area as opposed to any other neighborhood within Cedar City. A jail does not impact the value of homes, and part of the reason is because it's not just a jail, it's also the sheriff's office. And there's always law enforcement in those areas. They're patrolling back and forth through those neighborhoods. It's one of the safest neighborhoods in the city.
I was going to say, there's a lot more prioritizing when you're shopping for new houses from the outside area or even within Cedar City, that if you're concerned about your safety or crime rate, being closer to the jail is a frequency.
Well, and you know, one of the things that I think that people need to understand is part of the reason that the site down by Smead was selected as a potential site was because it was already zoned as industrial commercial, which is the only zoning that we can put a jail. It has to be zoned as industrial commercial. But something that people also need to understand is if the jail doesn't go in there, something else that's industrial will go in there. A meat packing plant, an asphalt plant, you know,
All of those are
anything else. And they're all meet into that same category, and it's been classified as industrial commercial for over 20 years. So, you know, buyer beware is something is going to go in there, whether it's a gel or something else. And I'm not saying that that's where the gel's going to go. I think that currently we have a couple sites that, to me, is a much better location, and it's not just because of people complaining, but it's because of over X requirements and additional construction materials that would have to be brought in to be able to support the weight of a gel. So I don't necessarily think that that area out by Smead is the best location. We have other locations that we're looking at with a lot of interest right now.
Ken, thank you so much for your information. It is incredible what we can do with in such little or such abundant information in this community. Hopefully we can get the message out there that this is not a solid plan. It is still in its very beginning planning stages. There is going to be more town halls, more city councils, more
Correct.
open town hall debates about this topic, and citizens can come as they want with the within the notices that are going to be pushed out there. Thank you, Sheriff Carpenter, for being on what's really happening in Southern Utah. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, McKennan Hansen, checking out of what's really happening in Southern Utah.